Gentlemen?
Wow, Mesmer. Hello. Big fan. Be with you in a minute. Wow, now we gotta kill him.
No, we don't have to kill him. Look, we made a deal with the guy. If he keeps his trap shut, he gets to see his kid. He's just a dad with his kid.
He's a fucking soup with a kid. What the fuck were you thinking, coming in eating no better than that?
Sometimes you get further with people by treating them like people.
This is From the Boys Season 1 Episode 6, The Innocents. It is the first time we see Butcher and Ant-Man were not on the same page about how to deal with things. Butcher thought they should kill the mercenary after questioning to cut the risk of exposure, but Ant-Man didn't agree with it, insisting there was a better way. This is the moment I will always recall when I analyze the later conflict completely splitting the mob in the Season 3. In that season, because Butcher used the illegal and untested superpower drug V-24 and worked with the villain Soldier Boy, the team members were divided seriously, creating two sides which stood with Butcher and Ant-Man respectively. In Ant-Man's perspective, using the illegal superpower drug to take down the company that created it and other corrupt soups was questionable, immoral, and couldn't fix the social problem for a long term. So for working with a bad, unstable person to eliminate another one. On the contrary, Butcher thought Ant-Man's ideas were naive. After all, beating the soups as the ordinary was extremely hard, and they already failed many times and caused too much before. As an audience, it's very difficult to say which way I support more, as they all got their reasons. However, I think the Butcher and Ant-Man's different thoughts about the way of fighting soups in Season 3 is not their fundamental conflicts. Behind this curtain, I think the core issue between them is more personal. It's the matter that Ant-Man thought Butcher was a man lacking principles. In the clips from The Innocents, Ant-Man pointed out Mesmer had a daughter he loved but lost custody of. So they could treat Mesmer more humanly, offering him a fair deal of visiting his daughter to exchange his silence about the boy's existence. In this case, the two sides could have a win-win peaceful situation. From this, we can see Ant-Man put human emotion at first. In his mind, reaching the goal was one thing, but way of reaching the goal was more important. Otherwise, anyone would not be able to get further with each other, and the world would be in a cold chaos. So in Ant-Man's value, this kind of principle was a thing he considered first. In the Mesmer case, the principle was humanity. However, in Butcher's mind, gold was the thing he considered first. Obviously, killing Mesmer was more simple and reliable to cut the risk. Although it was bloody and inhuman, Butcher was okay with that because it benefited the goal most. He didn't really care getting further with anyone or if the world would be in some cold chaos or not. In his value, many principles were not so meaningful if you couldn't achieve the goal. It was the difference between the two thinking modes. One emphasized principles and the other one didn't prioritize principles most of the time, divided Butcher and Ant-Man. And this crack probably existed even before the story of Season 1. In the Season 1 Episode 3, when we first see Butcher communicating with his old teammate, Ant-Man claimed himself to be a motherfucker with heart, and that Butcher was just a motherfucker. From this, we can infer that Ant-Man probably already knew Butcher was a guy who preferred using more extreme ways than any other to achieve his goal. And I think the reason why they were still friends then is that the situation did not reach the boiling point, and Ant-Man could tolerate him. Besides, they both hated soups. The only difference was that Ant-Man more cared about using a noble way to change the inequity between soups and the ordinary, which could prove there was a better way to do things, and further prove the society needs lies and he was better than those corrupt ones. In the opposite, Butcher more cared about wiping these soups out totally. He just wanted to get this done without proving anything. The two different thinking modes were first showed to us specifically in the scenes of The Innocents, and then emerged sometimes before the Season 3.
Nah, mate. Way off.
Bullshit, Butcher. You're so hot for Homelander right now, Butcher. You're not gonna let anything get in your way, even if it's your own fucking friends, man.
Are you telling me that her family is worth more to you than you see in your own?
No. I'm not. But Kamiko is one of us. I'll find another way. We're at our breaking point, at each other's throats. And you keep pushing us and pushing. It's like...
You're right over the fucking finish line. We just need to keep our shit together a little bit longer. Okay? We hand that cunt over, then I get Becca, and you get your girls. We're right fucking there. We're right there.
Huey's not gonna make it. And you need that kid. More than any one of us. He's your canary.
What canary?
You let your canary die? How you gonna know when you've gone too far?
Oh, me, what a load of bollocks.
From these examples, the difference between Butcher and MM is pretty obvious. But then there's a question, why the situations totally boiled up in Season 3? What elements were changed? For answering this, we first need to understand the background and the two characters' conditions in Season 3. Firstly, we take a look at Butcher. Like we said before, Butcher more care about wiping out the soups, and if we focus on a special person, that was Homelander. Working through the 3 seasons, Butcher's intention of placing Homelander as his priority over other teams' goals had been reflected many times. However, unfortunately, Homelander was the top of the food chain, which meant he was literally untouchable. In the former seasons, Butcher tried almost every way to hurt him, for emotion, reputation, but all didn't work out very well. The best thing he did might be the one in the end of Season 2, that he took away Ryan for Homelander, and also took down Stormfront. Being blackmailed by the Maeve Air disaster video, Homelander didn't dare to cross the line to do the payback. However, in Butcher's perspective, this result was far from justice. Because Homelander was still not judged by anything, he still had a normal image in public eyes and walked freely, which could not satisfy Butcher's desire for vengeance. At the same time, the thing that made the situation worse was the opening of the FBSA made the Butcher need to cooperate with the government institution to oversee the soups. Considering the bureaucratic nature of the government and the FBSA director Newman's inside relationship and trading with Watt, actually lots of beating Soup's works were just scratching the surface. Some of A-listers could not be brought to justice. Instead, Watt exchanged them with some B-listers to make the government's numbers Soup's collateral damage looks good. Although Butcher didn't realize the relationship between Newman and Watt then, this situation was haunting him. Not touching Homelander already made him unsatisfied, but now he could not even touch other soups, which made him very depressed. From his goal's priority perspective, the situation was really shitty. And then the boiling point was reached when he found out Newman's true identity as a soup and her relationship with Watt. Butcher was completely on fire. He realized his goal couldn't be achieved because of his high-level inside business. More worse, now he was just the two of them. Without hesitation, he chose using V-24, setting out on his burly vengeance road. After that, he went further and further. He emotionally hurt Ryan, forced Frenchie and Kimiko to attend gang activities, and even worked with Soldier Boy, the one killed Eminem's family and rarely caused a disaster. And all of this was to achieve his goal, which in this case was killing Homelander. He didn't like V-24, and working with Soldier Boy also caused the death of lots of people in Herogasm, but he did not stop, especially after tasting the feeling of punching Homelander. From this, we can realize that Butcher's extreme and cold actions in Season 3 will become more frequent and up to another level. He put aside relationships, social morality, despising the soups all at the same time, which he never did before. As he pushed forward his plan, he just did those things one by one fiercely, and simply would not stop and did not want to be stopped, which he never showed before too. And I think the element changed here was after reaching the boiling point that Butcher realized he would never accomplish his goal if he kept staying in this circumstance. It was all rigged. So he broke all the rules and did whatever it takes. In former season, there was no such circumstance when his goal totally being threatened. Especially in Season 3, V-24 just gave him the best shot to get rid of this circumstance. So Butcher freed himself. Quoting his own words,
V just made me more me.
Now we take a look at MM. In his value, principle was the thing he considered first. From the poster in his apartment and the clothes he wore, we can see he paid plenty of attention on black people's right movements. When MM was a kid, some of his family were killed in the Soldier Boy's reckless law enforcement in the black neighborhood. After that, MM's father, who was a small-time lawyer, worked as hard as he could to fight the teams of lawyers and judges who were paid off by Watt. Quoting MM, his father believed in the law and that nobody was above it. Then MM inherited this spirit from his father. He hated the inequity between the classes, races, and wanted to correct this reality. In Season 3, the V-24 showed up, and the people close to him, like Butcher, were starting to take this, which highly challenged his mind of equity, which made him very upset.
The whole point of what we do, the whole goddamn point, is that no one should have that kind of power.
In MM's mind, it was the lack of overseeing this kind of power that caused the difference between Supes and the ordinary. If they took V just as they wanted, they became the new privileged class, and the inequity of the reality still would not change. In addition to his concern for the society, MM's mind of principle was also reflected in his personal field. Working through the 3 seasons, we can see many times that MM showed his concern for the other teammates, and he kept a relative close relationship with everyone of the team. And even Butcher recognized that and described himself as the one without this quality, because he could be very hard when trying to achieve the goal. In Season 3, before finding out that Butcher was using V-24, MM already criticized the former for being too cold-hearted to Ryan and Kimiko, and said that he was not gonna tolerate Butcher's bullshit anymore. But just after that, Butcher's V-24 issue was exposed, and MM was very unhappy. He stepped with Butcher and tried to do things in his own way. However, even at this point, the scene was not so irredeemable, comparing with Butcher's following actions.
I can't draw no line, Em. Not with what I gotta do. I'm sorry. You'll be right in the morning.
In this case, after finding out that Soulja Boy came back, Butcher persuaded MM to go after Soulja Boy together, but actually he just used MM to get the lead of Soulja Boy, then roofied him and worked with the latter one. Now Butcher was not just ignoring the principles, he stopped MM from doing things with these principles, and don't even mention he didn't consider MM's personal feeling about Soulja Boy, which was also a principle he broke. At this moment, MM totally went berserk and lost his mind, as Butcher shattered all the principles he cherished and even confronted them. Under this condition, his compulsion on principle started triggering some suicidal actions. For example, he tried to fight Soulja Boy and superpower Butcher with bare hands, and even wanted to engage when facing a battle between Soulja Boy and Homelander. So we can see that the difference between Butcher and MM had existed for a long time. It became obvious in Season 3 because of V-24 and Soulja Boy, which made things have to go one way or the other. There was little room to negotiate. On the one hand, the situation was harder, as the stronger Supes like Newman, Payback began coming on stage. On the other hand, using V-24 was so appealing when we faced a tough situation. Finally, this dilemma pushed Butcher goal-thinking mode to come against MM's principles. And in the end of Season 3, I think this conflict was still not resolved. Of course, Butcher proved back himself for Ryan indeed is their fiction, but they could not justify that he took V and worked with Soulja Boy. If Ryan was not here or situation allowed Butcher to move Ryan to a safe place before the fight happened, Butcher might probably keep carrying out his plan. So I think the point of this Ryan scene is that it proves Butcher still have some thin bottom lines. That's why I say in the beginning that Butcher didn't consider principles most of the time, because in fact there were some few times. And that might be the only reason to still keep him and MM under the same roof, though the atmosphere between them was pretty awkward, as this time things got really big. Looking backward, we can see that actually it was not the first time Butcher acted like this. He always did awful thing first, and on the halfway, if he encountered someone or something he really cared about, then he just pulled back. If nothing stood in his way or he didn't consider too much about the hurt he caused, he would just keep carrying out his plan. And if the situation was not too urgent, he might even move the one he cared about out of his role and keep moving on. A great example is that he saved Huey from the side effects of V-24 but still injected for himself to do the vengeance. And in the negotiation with Nina, he also didn't hand over Sherry but chose another way, though this another way was still shitty and caused a big trouble for Frenchie and Kimiko. So in Butcher's mind, maybe he didn't even notice himself. He always chose extreme actions first, until he realized that keep going would definitely break something. But Ant-Man would not do this at the first place. He thought these actions was not right, no matter if it would encounter something you cared about or not. And the crash of these two kinds of thinking moths really caused some problems, which became more serious in Season 3 because of V-24 and Soulja Boy. So, in the end, the problem between Butcher and Ant-Man was still about principles. Butcher didn't think about them at the first place, but Ant-Man cared about them very much, maybe sometimes too much. After the big fight of Season 3, I didn't know how these two would go along with each other. Maybe still would wander back and forth like before. But their difference about principles, I think, would exist for a long time.